and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. We'll start with a check of the top headlines this hour. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he will meet Danish officials next week to discuss rising tensions over Greenland. This comes as Washington continues to show interest in acquiring the strategic Arctic territory. Venezuela's Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello says a U.S. military attack that captured President Nicolas Maduro killed 100 people and wounded dozens. He called the attack on Venezuela terrible. U.S. President Donald Trump signs a memorandum ordering the United States to withdraw from 66 international organizations, saying they no longer serve American interests. The White House says the move targets dozens of UN and non-UN bodies. A U.S. immigration officer fatally shot a woman in Minneapolis, with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying the officer defensively shot to protect himself. The woman has been identified as 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good. Jordan and the European Union will hold their first ever bilateral summit in Amman, bringing together Jordanian King Abdullah with European Council President Antonio Costa and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The landmark meeting builds on the January 2025 strategic and comprehensive partnership, which includes a €3 billion European Union assistance package. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced that Australia will launch a royal commission into the December 14th Bondi Beach mass shooting that killed 15 people, amid intensified calls for tougher controls and a stronger action against anti-Semitism. BRICS, now comprising 10 countries, is holding its first ever drill. It will begin tomorrow in South African waters under the theme of joint actions to ensure the safety of shipping and maritime economic activities, with reports saying Russia and Iran will participate, a move expected to raise concerns in Western capitals. According to Syrian media reports, Syrian Finance Minister Mohammed Yasser Barnier held talks with a Saudi Fund for Development delegation. The visit follows a January 6th meeting with Syrian Education Minister as Riyadh expands concessional financing for infrastructure and basic services in Syria. All right, viewers, let's start with the top focus. Now, there's news coming in from Israel, where Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar has strongly condemned what he described as attacks by Syrian regime forces against the Kurdish population in northern Aleppo. He urged the international community, particularly Western countries, to take action, saying they owe a debt of honor to the Kurds for their role in defeating ISIS. Sa'ar said the attacks are grave and dangerous and warned that silence from the international community could lead to further escalation. Kurdish-led forces have been key allies of the US-led coalition against ISIS and continue to secure camps holding extremist remnants in northeast Syria. His comments come as intense fighting continues between Syrian state forces and Kurdish security units in Kurdish majority districts of Aleppo, with most casualties reported to be civilians. The criticism also comes at a sensitive moment, as Israel and Syria have recently resumed rare talks under US supervision aimed at de-escalating border tensions and protecting minority communities. Now, joining us in this discussion is Saul Satka, who's a political commentator, and he joins us live from Tel Aviv. Saul, first of all, I'd like you to start with your comments on the recent developments.
I'm very happy to hear that Mr. Saar, the foreign minister, has been speaking up against what the Jilani regime is doing against the Kurds. The Kurds, as you know, are the largest stateless minority in the Middle East, with 40 million spread across Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. They are severely persecuted in all those countries, and they deserve to have their own control over their own lives. And as we can see, when they don't have that, when a minority in the Middle East does not have control of their own lives, they remain at the mercy of crazed jihadists. And what we saw last night, and what we will hopefully no longer continue to see, is more of the same.
right, Sol, how do you think Syria is going to react to these developments?
Well, Syria is currently run by the Jalali regime, and no one really understands whether they're on the side of good or the side of evil. What we can see at the moment, they seem definitely to be on the side of evil. If they're on the side of evil, they certainly won't pay any heed at all to what the Israeli foreign minister says. And the only way to get a reaction out of them will be to put them at physical risk, as was done a few months ago when the Jalali regime attacked another minority, the Druze in the south on Israel's border. And Israel stepped up and bombed a few of their regime buildings, and that was the end of that. So I hope that doesn't need to happen again this time, but it might be that is what needs to happen.
Do you think that Israel will also get the support of the international community that it is urging for?
I doubt it very much, as we saw yesterday, at the same time when the Syrians were attacking their own people, their own minorities. The UN was very busy putting out more condemnations of Israel. So I very much doubt that the, in quotes, international community, which I'm not even sure what that means, but whatever that is, certainly they have never been on the side of the minorities of the Middle East. They haven't been on the side of the Jews or the Druze or the Kurds. No one seems to care about them. It might be that Israel alone will have to stand up for these persecuted minorities.
All right, sure. Sol, please do continue to stay on with me as we proceed ahead. Viewers, let's also tell you that the Lebanese Army has announced that it has completed the first phase of its plan to disarm Hezbollah, securing the area between the Israeli border and the Litani River. Army officials said they have achieved their objectives in this region and plan to extend operations across the rest of the Lebanon. Hezbollah continues to refuse disarmament north of the Litani River. The Lebanese Army says it now controls territory south of the Litani River, except for positions still held by Israel near the border. Operations will continue to clear unexploded ordnance and search for tunnels used by Hezbollah, while taking steps to prevent armed groups from rebuilding capabilities. Under the ceasefire, Hezbollah must dismantle military infrastructure in evacuated areas, but Israel continues limited operations, questioning the effectiveness of disarmament efforts. I request Sol to join me back in this discussion here. Sol, it was earlier also reported that Hezbollah was disarmed in the south of Litani River, and then there were fresh attacks that were reported. It was then said that those celebrations were rather premature, and then this time again the same statement has been issued that south of Litani Hezbollah has been disarmed. Do you think once again it's too soon to make that comment? Should Lebanon be more watchful before declaring that south of Litani has been clear of Hezbollah?
Absolutely. The Lebanese army have large parts of it that are allied or actual members of Hezbollah. That's always been the problem. So when you have an organization like the Lebanese army, which is extremely weak, far weaker than Hezbollah were at the start of the war, pretty much there's no way that they can disarm Hezbollah, because Hezbollah know when they are coming, and many of their members are acting in cahoots for them. In the end, the only way that Lebanon will be cleared of Hezbollah is by Israel. There's no one else with the means or the will to do it. They largely removed Hezbollah from south of the Litani, perhaps 90%, but they're able to continually build back up. What's happening in Iran is going to affect them very severely. What happened in Syria a year ago affects them a lot, because it means that the ability of themselves to rearm is very limited. So Israel continues to attrit them to blow up their toys, and unless they can renew their own weaponry at a pace that's faster than they can rearm, then the Israelis can blow them up, then eventually they really will run out of weapons, they will run out of steam. They are severely damaged, they've lost a lot of their fighters. They now have a few thousand men, perhaps 5,000 men, who are permanently disabled after the pager attack, that they now have to maintain and care for their families. They're an army in disarray, an army that used to be able to spread its fangs in every direction. They were involved in genocide of Kurds and others in Syria over the past decades. And they are hated, widely hated around the region, even among their heartland Shia brothers. Whether or not the Lebanese can disarm them alone is very unlikely, but it might take a few years, but Hezbollah probably is a thing of the past, particularly if and when the Iranian regime finally collapses, because they are their primary backers. While the Iranian regime are currently offering protesters $7 a head to go home and leave them alone, they have been offering members of Hezbollah $1,500 a month, which is an extraordinary amount of money in that part of the world. Lebanon is one of the poorest countries in the world. So the Iranian regime has been backing up Hezbollah at the cost of their own people. And as their people all increase poverty, one can only assume that Hezbollah will get dried up.
All right, sure. And how likely is it, Saul, that you think that Hezbollah is in a position to rearm itself and spread from the north?
As a threat to Israel, Hezbollah is no longer a significant threat to Israel. They're too deeply surveilled, and they've been pushed away far enough from the Israeli border to mean there's no possibility really of any major Hezbollah surprise attack, as Israel saw 2 years ago via Hamas. However, they remain a threat to some degree to the people of Lebanon alone. How likely is it that they will be able to protect power again in the future? As I said, it's very unlikely, only because they no longer are going to have much access to weapons. Indeed, they have training camps all over Venezuela, and Venezuela is now essentially, for all intents and purposes, a vassal of the United States rather than of Russia and Iran, as it has been until last week. So things have really changed for Hezbollah over the past 2 years, and even over the past week to their detriment. It's going to make them a lot weaker. Whether they remain a threat and to who remains to be seen.
All right, sure. Thanks very much, then, Saul, for joining me in this discussion and with helping us with that perspective of yours. And with that, viewers, we're now going to proceed to some news on Greenland that's really become the hot topic. Now, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot firmly stated that Greenland is not for sale, emphasizing that the era of territory being bought or sold like the Louisiana purchase is long over. This remark follows a meeting with his German, Polish and Indian counterparts. German Foreign Minister Johann Wattfull added that any security issues in the Arctic must be discussed within NATO's framework. These statements highlight the growing international focus on the strategic importance of the Arctic. Let's listen in first to the French Foreign Minister and his comments.
Et comme l'a rappelé plus récemment la Première ministre danoise, le Groenland n'est pas à vendre. Il n'est pas à prendre. Nous ne sommes plus à l'époque où on pouvait acheter ou vendre la Louisiane. Et donc ces intimidations doivent cesser et le Danemark sait pouvoir compter avec la solidarité des pays européens qui l'ont rappelé par la voix de leur chef d'État et de gouvernement dans un communiqué commun pas plus tard qu'hier. C'est un travail que j'ai évoqué à mes partenaires allemands et polonais qui a vocation à être élargi à l'ensemble de nos partenaires européens puisque c'est aujourd'hui la question qui est posée, la manière dont l'Europe, l'Union européenne peut se renforcer pour dissuader toute forme de menace, toute forme d'atteinte à sa sécurité ou à ses intérêts. Donc rien de nouveau.
All right, now let's request my colleague Asuma Katauka to join me in this discussion here. Asuma, what's the latest that we're picking up as far as the reactions that are coming from across the international community?
Yes, a lot of international leaders have spoken out and commented towards that, and you have played the bites from French minister, and we also know that 7 European leaders, to be specific, have called out the move indicated or eyed by United States, in particular to Greenland. So 7 European leaders, they include French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and they have also issued a joint statement yesterday morning about the mineral-rich Greenland, saying that it belongs to its people, and protecting their sovereignty, emphasizing on the sovereignty and the fact that it is a sovereign part of Denmark, and it does not belong to anyone else. And also something to note that Jean Barrot, the French foreign minister, he has also reiterated it today on the support for Greenland. He has kind of continued to talk about the position, clarifying that France stands with Greenland behind other allies, in emphasizing that the sovereignty be protected, and US should know that a lot of countries will be careful, or seeing what US does next, or what US states next. And President Trump has said that in 20 days we will come back to this topic in his latest in one of his latest Truth Social posts. So we will be eyeing this as this develops. However, something to note is that even Secretary of Rubio and Caroline Leavitt from yesterday's press conference stated that, using force is not out of the picture, which really escalates this situation. And also something we know that all the countries, especially the Western countries, including US, they're all in the same alliance of NATO. So here we have to note down that they're all part of the same alliance, NATO, and one country attacking another NATO ally, this is going to further strain the relations, and it will be in a thin balance, since Greenland is under Denmark. Denmark is one of the countries, and US is one of the founding members of NATO, and all the members of European countries, including the 7 leaders that I've mentioned earlier, and we played the bite, have reiterated the fact that another NATO country attacking another NATO country, NATO ally, will just be the end of NATO. Some have even stated that. So we will be eyeing this situation as it develops.
All right, thanks very much, Asuma, for sharing all that with us, because that's the latest as far as the reactions from the international community on Trump's Greenland acquisition push is concerned. But for now, we're now shifting to some news on the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukraine should not face additional conditions in any future peace negotiations. Speaking during a ceremony in Nicosia, which marks Cyprus's assumption of the European Union's rotating presidency, Zelensky has urged European allies to intensify pressure on Russia, particularly through tougher sanctions. Let's listen in.
We need a practical mechanism that will allow these funds to truly help Ukraine. This mechanism must be designed not to create problems, of course, but to reduce the challenges we already face. And we are doing everything required on our side in the negotiation process. And we expect that no additional or excessive demands will be placed on Ukraine. Sanctions on Russia, support for Ukraine, strengthening our defense together, all of this works for peace, of course. And we have discussed at the EU level, within the coalition of the willing, and in our bilateral work with Cyprus, that sanctions need to be upgraded. A new package is being prepared, and many steps are being taken to target Russia's shadow fleet.
In fact, Zelensky made the remarks in the presence of senior European leaders during meetings in the capital city of Cyprus. Moreover, the Ukrainian president has also renewed his push for progress on Ukraine's European Union membership bid. He has said that Ukraine's inclusion in the European project is vital for long-term stability and security across the continent. Now, joining me in this discussion is Dr. Doktro, who's a Russian affairs expert from Brussels. Zelensky now pushing for European Union membership. How likely is this, Doctor?
I was just listening to your report a few moments ago with respect to Greenland and the position of the French and other European Union members. And it is exactly aligned with what I have to say about President Zelensky's latest speech in Cyprus. The talk is cheap, and this is cheap talk. The things that count were not at all present in his speech. But the only thing that counts in looking at how the war will evolve is the granting of 95 billion euros in credits to Ukraine by the European Union, which has been done. That is a done deal. Everything else is talk, is cheap talk. There is going to be no peace treaty supervised by President Trump. There may be a new turn or twist in Trump's position that he will side more or less with Zelensky on putting in place security guarantees for Ukraine. All of this is buying time. All of this is drawing out the war, which is what Europeans are keen to do. And the war will end on Russia's terms when Russia takes as much of Ukraine as it thinks is necessary to ensure its own security. And that will be all of Ukraine up to the Dnieper. So we can listen to Mr. Zelensky. He can be very proud of his speeches, but they have zero value.
All right, sure. What do you think about the security guarantees that it is seeking? Yeah, yesterday we had this discussion where you said that, the US saying that it is going to offer security guarantees is merely an eyewash because no such agreement has been signed. But we do know that European Union has issued or at least offered to give loan to Zelensky to the amount of about 100 billion euro. Once again, let's have that discussion with you saying that that document by the US has not been signed and the European Union only offering a loan. Does this really help Zelensky in any way?
Well, it's called a loan, but in fact it's a grant. The terms of the loan, it has been beautified because for the sake of appearing to be a continuation of discussions that the EU member countries had over confiscation of Russian state assets in Belgium. That had been couched as a loan against the future payments of war damages to Ukraine, which everyone knew would never take place. But that was a technicality, a legal technicality of the original grant of this amount of money to Ukraine, which fell through because of Belgian opposition to confiscation of Russian assets. So they kept the same scheme of a loan against reparations, although in fact everyone understands there will be no reparations, and this is not a loan, it's a grant. So Mr. Zelensky has what he wants. He can walk like a rooster across the global stage, and he has power for the next 2 years at least, while the money lasts. Will this change the war in Ukraine? Not at all. Will this bring negotiations one step closer? Not at all. So even if the United States should sign on to the absurd conditions for a peace that were agreed by the Coalition of the Willing in Paris earlier this week, that changes nothing. The United States has already done the maximum, short of triggering World War III, to put pressure on the Russians. The same is true of the European Union. Let's be clear about it. The United States has used sanctions for decades now as a way of destroying countries, preparing them for regime change. That is what happened in Venezuela. That is why it was possible to say that Mr. Maduro was not popular. Of course, how can you be popular when your economy is sinking like a stone because of American sanctions? That is exactly the reason why there are disturbances in Iran today. They are American sanctions that are the softening up for an eventual military attack. The only two countries in the world that I'm aware of that have survived American sanctions in good order, Iran survived them, but in not very good order, are Russia and China. When President Trump tried to inflict damaging sanctions by means of tariffs on China, the Chinese responded by cutting off all exports of critical rare earth metals that would shut down Western industry in a matter of weeks. The United States understood that reluctantly and drew in its horns, continued putting off indefinitely sanctions on China. Russia has survived several thousand different editions of sanctions, like no other country on earth. So this is the way the world stands. There is nothing whatever that the EU or the United States can do to sanction Russia without immediately triggering World War III.
All right, sure. Thanks very much, Doctor, for your comments here. We appreciate you joining us at NewsX World. And moving ahead, viewers, let's track some news now from Australia that will launch a royal commission into the deadly Bondi Beach shooting that killed 15 people, according to Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Now, Albanese said the federal inquiry will be high-powered and aim to provide answers to the public, focusing on understanding the incident and preventing similar tragedies in the future. He emphasized that the government's priority is promoting unity and social cohesion, describing the commission as a step toward helping Australia heal after the horrific event. Let's listen into that statement.
Today I announce that I will be recommending to the Governor-General in an Executive Council meeting that will be held tomorrow that a Royal Commission on Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion be established. This was endorsed by a meeting of the Federal Cabinet today. I have asked that former High Court Justice, the Honourable Virginia Bell AC, to serve as the Commissioner. I've said repeatedly that our government's priority is to promote unity and social cohesion, and this is what Australia needs: to heal, to learn, to come together in a spirit of national unity, and to go forward knowing that just like people who gathered that night on Bondi Beach were committing to, that light will prevail over darkness. It's clear to me that a Royal Commission is essential to achieving this.
All right, and that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching NewsX World. For all